Luxury sports car buyers traditionally sold on the charms of a Mercedes SL will certainly be sold on this much improved Mark 6 model. They'll like the lithe proportions and deft detailing, the powerful engines and the luxurious technology. It's more important though to consider whether the changes made here will widen this classic model's customer audience. More sophistication when it comes to transmission and drive dynamics certainly means it has more to offer. It's a special car, as every SL should be.
There aren't many truly iconic cars in the modern motor industry, but this is one of them, the Mercedes SL. This improved Mark 6 model has become cleverer and better looking, more than ever before, a very sophisticated kind of sports car. Significant development of this model line is something that SL buyers are well used to. Over 6 generations, spanning as many decades, everything has changed about this car. And yet in many ways, nothing is different. For three-pointed star buyers, it is still the ultimate expression of sporting opulence and remains perhaps the definitive face of this legendary luxury brand. Yet one that, over more than 65 years, has changed from supercar to sports roadster, and from there through boulevard cruiser to autobahn bruiser. A design, in other words, that through its lifetime has managed at different times and in different forms to define everything a sports car should be. When first the SL appeared in 1952 to spearhead the brand's peacetime return to motorsport, the post-war German economic miracle had hardly begun, and many Mercedes factories still lay in ruins. Undaunted, the company's head of testing, Rudolf Uhlenhaut, decreed that the Mark would use this car to win the Le Mans 24-hour race, which it duly did, the perfect platform for the brand's subsequent successful return to the Grand Prix grid. And that might have been the end of the SL story, had it not been for an entrepreneurial Austrian-born US businessman called Max Hoffmann. Recognising the sales potential for a car like the SL, he persuaded the Mercedes board to reinvent it as a different kind of sporting machine, more of a grand touring GT, still fast, but not as frantic. So were laid the foundations for the car we know today. The Gullwing W198 version of the 50s, the Pagoda W113 model of the 60s, and the R107 series made famous by the Ewings on TV in Dallas in the 70s. High tech arrived in 1989 with an R129 generation that pioneered pop-up roll bars and integral seatbelts. And more was served up in 2001 with an R230 design whose folding metal Vario roof gave SL buyers both coupe and roadster rolled into one. It's a varied portfolio that's laid the foundations for the Mercedes sports car range we have today, beginning with the compact SLC and culminating with the extravagant AMG GT. In between those two models lies this one, the R231 Series SL, originally launched in 2012, and a car that, like the 1952 original, properly lives up to its name. SL, after all, stands for Sport Leicht, and this car, like that one, is made almost entirely from lightweight aluminium. By 2015, though, it was clear that beyond the clever fundamentals, further embellishment was needed. Customers wanted a sleeker look and more dynamic driving aids. Plus, by now, the engineers had developed a smoother 9-speed auto gearbox to go with the extra media connectivity and the more advanced safety features that could be carried over from mainstream models. Hence the need for this significantly revised Mark 6 SL, launched in the spring of 2016, and the car we're going to test here. So, to the SL experience, and whether or not you see this as a sports car or a sporting car, there is quite a difference. A journey in one of these remains a very special experience indeed, that begins here with the silver starter button. A touch upon it reveals a muted, muffled roar from beneath that enormous bonnet that stretches out before you, tonally tuned by the size of the engine you've specified. Perhaps, as here, the 3-litre twin-turbo V6 of this entry-level SL400 which in this improved model develops 367 brake horsepower, 39 brake horsepower more than before. Or if not that, then the 455 braked horses of the 4.7 litre twin-turbo V8 SL500. Beyond this, there are further bi-turbo Mercedes-AMG variants to try and snare the supercar set, namely the 5.5 litre V8 of the SL63, which can now put out as much as 585 brake horsepower, or if you really must, the 6 litre V12 of the SL65, which with 630 bhp is arguably the fastest thing Mercedes makes. All the engines on offer are aided by the lighter aluminium underpinnings that this 6th generation model was designed around, a setup that promises more of a lithe, agile driving experience than we'd had for an any SL since the 60s. On the move, your perception as to whether this has really been delivered will depend on some extent your expectations. Dynamically, this car has always sat rather uneasily, somewhere between a Porsche 911 Cabriolet and a BMW 6 Series convertible. Not as sharp as the 911 and not as luxurious as the 6. In older SLs, what you ended up with as a result of that was a roadster that, well, to be frank, gave you neither one thing nor the other. Since the installation of that more sophisticated platform, though, this 6th generation design has moved on from that, and we're more inclined to agree these days with Mercedes that this SL has the potential to offer the best of both worlds. A long-distance sporting GT that can also be an out-and-out sports car when you want it to be. Or, if it makes more sense, a car in which you could travel very quickly to the Riviera, taking in a lap or two of the Nürburgring on the way. Helping the car's cause in this regard are two changes that have been made to the engineering spec of this revised Mark 6 model that we're trying here, headlined on SL400 and SL500 models by the installation of a new 9-speed 9G-tronic auto gearbox. This offers significant improvements in both smoothness and efficiency over the previous 7G-tronic unit and can be operated by these tactile steering wheel mounted paddle shifters. Ratio shift timings are one of the parameters you can alter via Dynamic Select, a driving mode system that represents the other key addition to this SL's road-going repertoire. As with most such setups, this one also allows you to alter steering feel, throttle response, stability control thresholds and the settings of the suspension, all to better suit the way that you want to drive. From startup, there's a default comfort setting, and from there you can choose either a frugally focused eco mode or more dynamic sport or sport plus options. You can also fiddle with the parameters of the various system elements by altering settings on a further individual menu. Now, spend long enough with this and you should find a setup you'll like. If all of that gets you in the mille miglia mood, then you'll be target market for the optional element freshly added to this revised SL that'll make a big difference to the enjoyment you'll be able to derive from this car if you're likely to regularly drive it quite hard. The feature in question is called the Active Body Control with Curve Tilting Function package, and its availability is limited to the more affordable SL400 and SL500 variants. The ABC Active Body Control active suspension aspect of this, included as standard on the Mercedes-AMG models, isn't particularly new. The setup automatically lowers the car at high speeds and can raise it at lower ones, but its primary purpose has always been to keep in check the prodigious body roll, otherwise very prevalent on large, powerful Mercedes sports coupes. Embellishing this setup with curve tilting functionality, though, has really moved things on. A system able to load the car's suspension at speed through sharp turns so as to lean it into the corner in the same way as a motorcyclist or a skier would lean into a bend. This minimises the lateral acceleration that through a tight curve would normally roll you towards the outside of your seat, and instead you'll be pushed down into your chair in much the same way as you would be on a roller coaster. Mercedes says firmly that the idea is not to increase cornering speeds, but to improve comfort. Yeah, right. Anyway, does it work? Well, once you get used to it, yes, but that takes a little bit of time. To start with, there are mental adjustments to make. With the system operating, the steering doesn't weight up as much as it normally would through a turn. That feels a little unnatural, as does the way the car leans inwards through the curve by up to 2.65 degrees like a motorbike to provide that tilting effect. You also have to be going pretty darn quickly for the whole setup to really work at its best, which means it's less effective in tight, low-speed corners, but enormously impressive through fast, steady-state bends like those you get on motorway slip roads. On fast, flowing roads, once you're in sync with the system, you'll be able to settle into extremely quick cross-country progress that would leave a rival Bentley or Aston Martin driver sweaty palmed and ferrying a car full of sick passengers. One day, perhaps all luxury sports cars will drive like this. If you don't feel the need to pay the high premium Mercedes is asking for the tilting technology, then we would understand. After all, even without it, an SL is a more involving thing than a rival BMW 6 Series or Maserati Grand Cabrio would be, thanks to feelsome steering and assured traction aided through the corners by standard torque vectoring. True, it's still not as agile as a Porsche 911, but the dynamic gap between these two cars has certainly narrowed, which is just as well because, as I suggested earlier, most versions of this Mercedes now offer extra performance. Even this entry-level V6 SL400 is detained for only 4.9 seconds by the rest of 62 miles an hour sprint, a figure that improves to 4.5 seconds in the V8 SL500. As you'd expect, the top Mercedes-AMG models are even quicker. The SL63 makes 62 miles an hour in 4.1 seconds, and the V12 SL65 improves that fractionally to 4 seconds dead. These supercar style variants feature a slightly different mechanical setup that works via a quicker shifting AMG speed shift auto transmission. This gearbox has just 7 speeds, but on an SL63 it does offer owners a race start function for Grand Prix style getaways. You can enjoy all the more courtesy of a rortier AMG sports exhaust system. Now, as mentioned earlier, the suspension on the top AMG variants is as standard, based on ABC active suspension technology, but on an SL63 it can be stiffened up with an optional performance suspension package. Such a setup, though, is probably more suited to buyers who'd be better off with the Stuttgart brand's other top sports car, the Mercedes-AMG GT. Unlike Porsche, Mercedes still fits a 155 miles an hour top speed restrictor on its top sporting models, this one included. But on Mercedes-AMG variants, paying extra for an optional AMG driver's package will raise that figure to 186 miles an hour for those who've a drag strip on hand or merely who possess a particularly long driveway. You probably won't want to be going that fast when travelling like this with the roof down, but the engineers do claim that up to 125 miles an hour, cabin occupants will remain unruffled and easily able to converse, something that we have verified for ourselves when lapping the Goodwood racetrack. When you do want to operate the Vario roof, it is slightly annoying that, in contrast to ragtop rivals, you have to stop before the mechanism will work. Still, you can now work it at speeds of up to 25 miles an hour, and the whole process takes only 18 seconds from start to finish. Once all the panels have slotted Swiss Army knife style into place, there's the folding hardtop advantage of greater roof-up refinement than a fabric convertible could ever provide. Something further aided by the fitment of acoustic film in the laminated windscreen. This is one of the reasons why this SL can be such a great long-distance tourer if you ever need it to be, and another reason why loyal owners like it so much. Let's start with the fineries of fashion. Classic SL proportions that have evolved through 6 generations and nearly half the history of this famous brand. The long bonnet, the compact passenger cell set well back within the wheelbase, and a muscular, racy-looking tail. Now, if you know anything at all about this car, you'd recognise one without the badge work, admiring perhaps the way that the grille has been positioned to visually lengthen that bonnet, or the shoulder lines that rise from the headlamps and stretch like tensed muscles along the bodywork into the taillights. All of this is as it was in the original version of this R231 6th generation SL. And what's changed with this revised model is the front end, now far more elegant and imposing. Mercedes' legendary 300 SL Pan America racing car provided the inspiration for this more steeply raked diamond-style radiator grille with its chrome-plated louvre and jewel-like chromed pins. Another alteration that existing SL owners might notice lies in the way that the previously separate daytime running lamps have now been integrated into smarter, sleeker headlights that now feature LED intelligent light system technology as standard. Integrating all the illumination into the headlamp units has allowed this lower frontal area to be reworked in a significantly more dynamic way, with more striking air intakes, aggressively moulded contours, and this neat body-coloured lower edge front splitter. Move to the rear and the changes made are more subtle, but nevertheless play their part in the smarter look. The light clusters are now all red and there's a restyled bumper that features these integrated side outlets. The lower diffuser section looks cleaner too, incorporating integral tailpipes at either end, as well as a centrally arranged rear fog light and reversing lamp. Plus there's the option of one of those electrically operable boot lids you can open by waving your foot beneath the bumper. And in profile, well, inevitably the car looks at its best with the roof down like this. These steeply angled A-pillars complementing fine details like this cosmetic air vent with its twin chromed fins, another reference to that legendary 50s 300 SL model. This outlet marks the starting point for a striking crease that flows back through the door handles into these powerful rear haunches, giving this car a visually forward thrust, even when it's standing still. As usual though, it's what you can't see that's important here. SL may stand for Sport Leicht, but historically this Mercedes has always been something of a sporting heavy hitter, big in bulk and to compensate, well provided for in power. Now, when designing the original version of this 6th generation model though, the brand decided to turn the clock back. The very first SL in 1952 was made from aluminium, so too they decided would this model be, the result being a saving of up to 110 kilos in weight. Of course, this car could have been a lot lighter still if the designers had dispensed with the bulky, electrically operated Vario metal folding roof that only Mercedes now provides in the volume luxury sports car segment. This setup is undeniably very clever, and if you pay extra for the keyless go comfort option we've got here, it's possible for the top to be programmed to work from the key fob, so as you don't need to disturb your cappuccino if you're sitting over the road from your car and the heavens open. As on the original version of this Mark 6 model, the erection or retraction process occupies 18 seconds, but what's changed on this improved SL is that you can raise or lower the roof on the move at speeds of up to 25 miles an hour, although annoyingly you still have to briefly stop first to activate the system. This roof mechanism remains one of the things that most appeals about this car to many buyers, even though it eats into boot space and makes it impossible for this SL to offer the pair of occasional rear seats that you'll find in competitors from BMW, Maserati and Porsche. Now here the designers have sought to emphasise the benefits of folding metal top technology, not just in the extra security and refinement it provides, but also in the option it offers, taken up in this revised SL, of providing owners with a glass top that gives them a much lighter, airier feeling cabin when the roof's up. At extra cost, you can also have this with what Mercedes calls magic sky control that turns the glazed panel opaque at the touch of a button to shade the cabin from bright sunlight. As before, the metal top won't work unless this boot separator is in its lower position, which it typically won't be if you've recently been using the car up on journeys where you've needed to maximise boot space. Now, there's 504 litres of that when the roof's up like this. Previously, this often left you constantly wondering why the roof mechanism didn't operate at the usual press of the centre console button, until you remembered the separator's upper positioning and then had to get out and alter it. In this revised Mark 6 Model SL though, the car is able to sense this situation and automatically lower the boot separator if you forget to do it. As one Mercedes engineer remarked at this car's launch, "Why did we not do this before?" As mentioned earlier, when the roof is lowered, space shrinks quite a lot, but don't worry, you don't have to try and slide things in through this letterbox-like slot. Pressing this button tilts the roof stowage sandwich 25 degrees upwards for easier loading, opening up a surprisingly large 364-litre stowage area that's actually 64 litres bigger than that provided by a rival fabric-topped BMW 6 Series convertible, and more than twice as big as the area you get in a Porsche 911 Cabriolet. There's a little extra space beneath the boot floor too, but only because Mercedes declines to supply this car with any kind of space-saver spare wheel. At the wheel, few changes have been made over the original version of this 6th generation SL, but then few were needed. As with other Mercedes models, influences have been drawn from the world of aviation, with gorgeous jet turbine-style air vents dominating a wing-shaped dash, with a centre console modelled on the flight deck of an aircraft. Unlike the close-fitting cockpit you get in an SLC or an AMG GT, this cabin offers plenty of space to spread out, thanks to the general increase in size of this Mark 6 design. And as before, there's a 3-spoke, Napa leather-trimmed, flat-bottomed sports steering wheel fashioned from pure magnesium, through which you view a set of classic backlit tubular dials separated by a TFT colour monitor, delivering the usual trip computer and media functions. The sports seats are usually trimmed in black perforated sun-reflecting leather. We have the Bengal red option here. And if you take our advice, you'll equip them with the optional air scarf system that gently wafts warm air around your neck from these slots in the headrest. It's one of those things that'll make you more likely to want to put the top down on sunnier winter days and really enjoy your SL to the full. Further help in that regard will be provided if you remember to fit in the wind deflector. A fabric one is provided as standard, but ideally you'll stretch to the optional electrically retracting item fitted here that shields the cabin from buffeting really well. Dating the dash slightly is the relatively small 7-inch size of the Command Online colour infotainment screen, along with the fact that the cabin lacks the mouse-style controller you'll find in more recently designed Mercedes models. Functionality instead delivered by this old-style swivelling rotary controller down by the gear stick. Still, at least the command setup is now standard across the range, offering some classy vehicle parameter displays and fully integrated with the Apple CarPlay system, which will be welcome news for iPhone users. Plus, as you'd expect, it's very effective at dealing with the usual audio, Bluetooth and navigational functions, as well as providing in-car internet access that connects through to Facebook and online radio, as well as linking into various Mercedes apps. As for practicality, well, it's a bit shocking on such an expensive sports car to find that cup holders like these cost extra. And you're going to want them because otherwise the only place you'll have to store your morning Starbucks infusion is in this sliding lidded box that requires an uncomfortable reach backwards, past this more accessible twin-lidded cubby that incorporates a phone holder and a couple of USB ports. Other than that, the storage at the wheel is limited to a very compact glove box and small door bins, although you do get an overhead compartment for your sunglasses. Nor, of course, do SL buyers get the occasional use rear seats provided by many fabric-top rivals in this segment. As a small compensation though, Mercedes offers electrical buttons on the seat's shoulders so you can move the chairs forward and cram coats and things in behind. Plus, to keep valuables away from prying eyes, there's this storage box behind the passenger seat. Prices start from around the £75,000 mark for the entry-level SL400 we've been trying here, with a £9,000 premium on top of that if you want to go from V6 to V8 power and get yourself the SL500 version. Both variants now only come with sporting AMG line trim. As for the top Mercedes AMG models, well, inevitably you'll need a 6-figure budget, around £115,000 for the 5.5 litre, 585 brake horsepower V8 SL63, and around £175,000 for the 6 litre, 630 brake horsepower V12 SL65. Next, a few words on the value proposition those figures represent. Mercedes reckons that this SL lacks any really direct rivals, referring to the fact that nearly all the alternatives you can name have fabric hoods rather than this car's elaborate metal folding top. Nevertheless, we think you'll want to know what the competition offers. So in terms of rivals for this SL400 model, you could possibly consider a slightly smaller luxury sports roadster like Jaguar's F-Type. But we think that closer, more relevant competitors to this Mercedes can be found in the form of BMW's 640i convertible and Porsche's 911 Carrera Cabriolet. Now, the slightly less powerful BMW is more of a cosseting Grand Tourer and costs around £10,000 less. The slightly more powerful 911 is more of an out-and-out sports car and costs around £10,000 more. So, your call. Switch your attention to the V8 SL500 and the proposition is similar. You pay around £12,000 less for a BMW 650i convertible or around £10,000 more for a Porsche Carrera S Cabriolet. At this level, the comparison with Jaguar's F-Type is arguably more relevant, given that the Jag's more diminutive size is compensated for by its extra power, and that pricing for a V8 F-Type is very similar to the figure being asked for an SL500. Now, if you can stretch your budget up to either just below or just above the £100,000 mark, then other potential alternatives can be found in the form of Maserati's Gran Cabrio, BMW's M6 convertible and Aston Martin's V8 Vantage S Roadster. The SL500's same V8 engine is also used in Mercedes' S-Class Cabriolet, but that model doesn't pretend to be any kind of sports car and it costs around £110,000. On to the awesome Mercedes AMG variants. The V8-powered SL63 actually looks reasonably good value when you look at the alternatives. After all, Maserati's Gran Cabrio 4.7 V8 MC costs around the same, but offers 120 brake horsepower less. And if you were to go for an Audi R8 Spider 5.2 FSI or a Porsche 911 Turbo Cabriolet, you'd be getting 45 bhp less power, but paying around £15,000 to £20,000 more. Mercedes would also like you to see the SL63 as an alternative to the only other sports car in this segment with a metal folding roof, Ferrari's California T, a model which offers 25 bhp less and costs £40,000 more. If the SL63 is quite a tempting proposition for better-heeled buyers, you'd have to see its stablemate, the top SL65 model, as being much harder to justify. This V12 variant's lottery winner's price tag pitches it well above natural 12-cylinder GT cabrio rivals like Aston Martin's V12 Vantage Roadster, around £30,000 less, and Bentley's 6-litre Continental GT convertible, around £10,000 less. You could, though, argue that Mercedes targets these two rivals more directly with S63 and S65 versions of the S-Class Cabriolet we mentioned earlier, although those models are even more expensive than their SL counterparts. Most SL buyers, though, are happy when we're on the standard V6 or V8 variants, a car like the one we've been trying here. And if you have decided that such a thing is an appropriate reward for a lifetime's endeavour, then you're going to need to know just how generous Mercedes has been when it comes to the equipment provided as part of the single AMG line standard spec. Well, let's have a look. Both these mainstream models get the improved 9G Tronic Plus 9-speed automatic gearbox, along with the Dynamic Select driving mode system. Plus, of course, the defining feature of this car, its stylishly intricate metal folding Vario roof. Improvements over the pre-facelift model's equipment tally include features like a panoramic glass panel for the roof and the sophisticated Mercedes LED intelligent light system. That is in addition to a roster that runs to 19-inch lightweight alloy wheels, an AMG body styling kit, sports suspension with adaptive damping and power folding mirrors. Inside, the heated sports seats are trimmed with perforated leather and feature electric memory adjustment, while other key features include thermotronic climate control, a fabric wind deflector and a Parktronic system that automatically steers you into spaces. You can also tick off expected things like cruise control and an alarm immobiliser, plus auto headlamps and wipers. And nice touches like the system Mercedes calls Magic Vision Control, which stops the wiper blades from freezing up in winter and, as they operate, sprays washer fluid directly from them onto the screen for quicker and clearer vision. We should also mention the standard Command Online infotainment setup, which works via a 7-inch display. Now, through this, or by using Linguatronic voice control, you access HDD 3D navigation, live traffic information, and an 8-speaker DAB audio system with super clear front-based speakers. There's also provision for in-car internet that connects through to Facebook and online radio, as well as linking into various Mercedes apps. Command Online also gets you an enhanced version of the standard Mercedes Me Connect system, including what the brand calls remote and location services. Now, this feature means that via your phone or PC you can track your car if it's stolen, locate it if you've gone and forgot where you parked it, update yourself with your SR model's fuel level or mechanical status, and even lock or unlock the doors from wherever you are. So, time to switch our attention from the standard SL range to the more exotic, performance-orientated Mercedes-AMG models. If you can stretch to one of these, there's an appropriately more aggressive look, thanks to more overt AMG body styling, complemented by titanium grey 10-spoke 19-inch wheels. Inside, the AMG sports seats get the adjustable multi-contour system that adapts with the Benz, and there's an AMG-specific performance steering wheel and instrument cluster. There are some mechanical changes too, with an AMG tweaked version of the sports suspension setup, a Rortier AMG sports exhaust system, a bespoke AMG speed shift 7-speed automatic gearbox, and a rear axle limited slip differential lock for extra cornering traction. The top SL65 variant builds on this with some further trim embellishments and 3 features we'd be tempted to specify as options on a standard SL: a carbon fibre engine cover, ventilated seats, and a high-end 12-speaker 900-watt Bang & Olufsen Beosound surround sound system. Now, since we've mentioned options, let's talk a little about those and the way you might want to trim a slightly more affordable SL like this one to your own personal preferences. Now, it is a pity that Mercedes feels the need to charge extra for basics like cup holders, a decently sized 75-litre fuel tank, and the air scarf neck-level heating system that all SLs should have. So tick the boxes for all 3 of these things before you sign that check. You're probably also going to want the Keyless Go Comfort keyless entry package that lets you operate the roof from the key fob, the more sophisticated electrically operated wind deflector, and the clever Magic Sky Control feature for the panoramic roof, which changes the pixels in the glazed panel from light to dark at the press of a button. The other key option we think you need to carefully consider is a very pricey one, but it does make a big difference to the way this SL drives. The active body control with curve tilting function package, limited to SL400 and SL500 variants, gives you active suspension that automatically adapts itself to any given driving situation. It can be raised when you're creeping over obstacles to increase the ground clearance, and it'll automatically lower itself at high speeds to reduce aerodynamic drag. Then there's that active curve tilting function. Now, this leans the car into a corner like a motorcycle, so that rather than rolling you to the edge of your seat, you're pushed down into it. It's revolutionary. Beyond the things I just mentioned, other options really fall into the nice to have if you can afford it category. That means things like the active multi-contour seats that massage you as you drive, a reversing camera, a closing aid for the doors, special ambient lighting, illuminated door sill panels, and an analog clock. On most SLs, you're probably going to want to upgrade the stereo too, either to that thumping Bang & Olufsen system I mentioned earlier, or to the 11-speaker 600-watt Harman Kardon Logic 7 setup we've been trying here. As for aesthetics, well, there are various special Designo metallic paint colours and various higher-grade Napa leather trim finishes. As for the exterior, well, on standard SL models, you might well be tempted by the optional night package that features black exterior detailing for a meaner look. That's enough on that. Let's look at safety now. Germany's Federal Statistical Office reckons that Mercedes-Benz drivers are safer than those in any other kind of car. But even so, Stuttgart has taken no chances here. So we'll start with the expected stuff. Things like twin head and side airbags, plus there are crash-responsive Neck Pro head restraints to guard against whiplash, along with built-in roll bars that spring up from behind the seats in milliseconds if a potential rollover situation is detected. Other impact mitigating features include a deformable steering column and a clever active bonnet that, in the nightmare scenario of you colliding with a pedestrian, will, in a fraction of a second, raise itself by 80 millimetres, better protecting that unfortunate person's head and giving them a better chance of survival. There's also tyre pressure monitoring and all the usual electronic assistance features, including an ESP stability control system that also works with a curved dynamic assist feature to reduce dangerous understeer through the bends. You get ABS braking too, of course, with brake assist for emergency stops that'll activate adaptive brake lights that are able to automatically flash and instantly warn following motorists. Talking of brakes, we should also mention the active brake assist system. It's like an extra pair of eyes that, at urban speeds of up to 31 miles an hour, uses a radar sensor to constantly scan the road in front and behind you for moving and stationary vehicles that might represent potential collision hazards. If one's detected, it'll warn you and prime the brakes. Now, if you don't respond or you aren't able to, the car can brake itself to reduce the severity of any resulting accident. The system also protects against rear-end collisions at speeds of up to 25 miles an hour. So in other words, it is very clever. Testing has indicated that this whole setup will eradicate 20% of nose-to-tail accidents and decrease their severity in a further 25% of cases. It complements an adaptive brake system that stops you from rolling backwards on uphill junctions, primes the brakes whenever you come off the throttle, and dries the brake discs in wet weather for optimum efficiency. What else is standard to keep you safe in your SL? Well, earlier we mentioned the LED intelligent light system. Now, it changes the light pattern depending on when and how the car's being driven and dips the main beam for you at night. Then there's attention assist. That's a clever feature that monitors your driving reactions to detect drowsiness, and it'll respond to that by prompting you to stop for restorative coffee. And there's more, the pre-safe setup, for instance, there to pre-tension the seatbelts and move the seats to their safest position if the stability control electronics suggest the car's about to skid. We should also mention that the standard Mercedes Me Connect system includes an e-call emergency call feature that can do much more than just deal with accident recovery, breakdown and maintenance management. If you're incapacitated in the event of a crash, then it will automatically summon the emergency services and inform them of your exact GPS location. Want to go even further with SL safety provision? Well, unless you're a lottery-winning SL65 customer, you're going to need to pay extra to get yourself the optional driving assistance package we've been trying here, which provides 5 more important electronic features. The first, and possibly the most important item, is what Mercedes calls pre-safe brake. Now, this builds upon and complements the functionality of that standard active brake assist autonomous braking system I mentioned earlier. Rather than just relying on a radar sensor, though, the pre-safe brake setup uses a stereo camera that can send out much wider-reaching long, medium and short-wave radar beams as you drive. These are able to work at much higher speeds and pick up pedestrians as well as vehicles. As with active brake assist, autonomous braking can be applied if the system detects a hazard and the driver doesn't respond to the warnings. The second unique element in the driving assistance pack, BAS Plus, focuses on dangers that might be posed to you by crossing traffic at junctions. Now again, it can alert you and, if necessary, apply the brakes to avoid a hazard. There's also active blind spot assist to stop you from dangerously pulling out to overtake, and active lane keeping assist to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on major roads, and vibrating the steering wheel to warn you if you do veer out of lane, and using a steering pilot system to ease you back to where you should be on the road. Finally, there's the Distance Pilot Distronic setup, a sophisticated cruise control system that can work at high speeds using a radar and automatic braking to keep you a safe distance in front of and behind other cars in highway traffic. If you're thinking of buying this car, then you probably won't be worrying too much about its running costs, but Mercedes has. This is not only, thanks to its aluminium structure, one of the lightest cars of its kind ever made, but also one of the most aerodynamic, with a slippery CD factor of just 0.27. Given this revised 6th generation SL isn't an all-new design, there are no headline efficiency changes brought about by the implementation of complete new engines, but despite that, key improvements have been made. There's the more efficient 9G-tronic automatic gearbox for a start. That works with a standard start-stop system. And a dynamic select vehicle driving mode system offering an eco setting that softens the throttle response, changes up through the gears earlier to use less fuel, and offers a so-called sailing function that disconnects the engine from the transmission at cruising speeds. All of this should be enough to keep this SL on the pace when it comes to efficiency in this segment. The result of all this frugal thinking is that this V6 SL400 manages 36.7 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and a CO2 figure of 175 grams per kilometre, 30% better than those of the previous SL350, and scarcely believable figures from a 1.7-tonne luxury convertible sports car that's capable of 60 in under 5 seconds. It's a variant we'll be very tempted by, as it doesn't lose much in performance to the pricier V8 SL500, yet it's much more efficient to run. SL500 buyers are promised a combined cycle fuel return of 31.4 miles per gallon and a CO2 figure of 205 grams per kilometre. Of course, you'll need slightly deeper pockets to run one of the AMG models, and although the V8 SL63 AMG version's combined cycle 28 miles per gallon figure is better than we expected, the 234 grams per kilometre CO2 showing is nothing to write home about. Better though than the 23.7 miles per gallon and 279 grams per kilometre showing that you get in the V12 SL65 AMG flagship model. Of course, when you're paying this kind of money, range is often more important than actual fuel returns. So it's annoying to find that in the interests of a frankly insignificant weight saving, the designers of this Mark 6 model reduced the size of the SL fuel tank from 80 to just 65 litres, forcing SL400 and 500 owners who don't want to be continually brushing their brogues on filling station forecourts to pay extra for a larger capacity 75 litre item from the options list. It's crazy. At least the thirstier Mercedes-AMG variants get the larger tank as standard. Fortunately, even in standard form, an SL should give you at least 400 miles or so between fill-ups, provided you don't continue to try to drive it like Lewis Hamilton. That only leaves insurance. There's a top of the shop Group 50 rating across the board, and residual value. Depreciation will, it's true, be a significant ownership cost, but it'll be less painful on your pocket than would be the case if you'd bought a rival convertible BMW 6 Series model. In any case, SL owners tend to keep their cars for longer and so benefit from resale at the less painful end of the residual curve. With this SL400 variant, expect to get up to 36% of your original purchase price back after the usual industry standard 3-year, 36,000 mile ownership period. What else? Well, we'll tell you that the comprehensive 3-year, 100,000 mile warranty is built on by Mercedes' Mobilo scheme, which delivers breakdown cover for up to 30 years, as long as you continue to have your vehicle serviced at the Mercedes main dealer. It's also worth knowing that your maintenance outlay can be kept a little in check by going for the optional service care package that takes care of routine maintenance, spreading the cost of regular servicing and guaranteeing the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services, and covering the cost of all recommended service items such as brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. There's also an assist dashboard service indicator that monitors engine use and tells you exactly when a garage visit's due. Finally, if booking your car in for scheduled workshop appointments is just a bit too much effort, standard services that come as part of the basic Mercedes Me Connect system can remotely get in touch with your nearest franchise dealership to automatically make the appointment for you. This is a very special car. Now, not only because of its status as the first large-scale production Mercedes-Benz to feature an all-aluminium body. Like its predecessors, the 6th generation SL offers a unique, fascinating and in some ways contradictory interpretation of sports car motoring. It's not really tailored for a track, yet it's more than just a very grand GT. A combination that won't suit if your preferences lie at either of these extremes. For many, though, this will be the perfect way to reward themselves for a lifetime's endeavour. A car that feels genuinely coupe-like with the roof up and roadster-ready top down. Nothing else in this segment manages that quite as well. And nothing else in this segment, outside of a lottery winner's Ferrari California, can offer the security of a hard-top folding roof. Both are compelling reasons to support an expectation that this modern instalment in SL history will be just as successful as its predecessors. As for the changes that have created this much improved Mark 6 model, well, they're very welcome. And not only because of aesthetic updates that have given this car so much more street-side presence than it had before. The latest 9-speed gearbox and the dynamic select driving mode system make a big difference to the driving experience. And that's something well worth further embellishing with the optional active body control with curve tilting system, if you really want to enjoy everything this car's handling has to offer. In summary, what we have here is an enduring but very modern take on luxury sports car motoring, and a model that's every inch a classic Mercedes-Benz.